we're going to be tying this lucky coin knot, and I always have a bunch of different examples of each knot I've tied, because I save the first few I tie, and save a loose one and a tightened one, and various ones together, sometimes on the same string, so I can see how tight they are and what they look like, and how they work with different colors or without color changes. So I'm going to cross this, and I like this knot because it's the only knot that I know that uses the granny knot in its construction. It's the only possible way to use a granny knot that I've found that actually is aesthetically pleasing and good to use in some way, and symmetrical and workable. So we're going to tie this knot, and it's interesting because it's two granny knots tied and then pushed through each other. So we're going to explore how that works as we go. We're going to tie this around a fid. I've got a fid here, and I've got another one I'm going to be working with as we go, just to make it easier to pierce through the knot and get the strands lifted. So first, a granny knot is unlike a square knot because it uses the same overhand knot twice instead of having a reverse of the first overhand knot for the second. So in this case, we tied the left hand strand, the white one in this case, behind the right, and then up and through the loop to make the overhand knot. By tying two of these identical knots, we form a granny knot. A granny knot is undesirable because it slips and jams unpredictably, so it's not used for rope climbing or anything like that. And it's also an interesting knot because it tends to tighten to an off angle from the axis of one side to the other due to the duplication of the overhand knot. Anyways, we've tied that one twice. We're going to tie it twice again, leave a little bit of a gap there. We'll snug it up just a bit. Left under, and then through the loop. Left under, and through the loop. Okay, so we've got two granny knots tied in close proximity, and there's just about enough room in there for us to flip the running ends of those knots, which currently they face away from each other. If you'll permit the term running end to indicate this end of the top knot and this end of the bottom knot, we're going to take those through, and using the natural offset from each other, where we see that they're naturally, they try to be about 90 degrees off from each other, when we flip those through, we're going to find out that they don't really interfere, and we can thread them through the center of the opposing granny knot. So we're going to flip them upside down and fair up the ends so that they all are out on their opposing preferred side. We're going to take a fid, and we're going to skewer each of those knots right through its axis, right between the pairs, like so. We're going to get the other granny knot as well and nail it down right through the center. So now we have a nice stable configuration. We can tighten up against this, and it doesn't give us any trouble at all to work with or to examine. Perfectly symmetrical, everything's the same as it needs to be for the knot. So okay, now as we see, this strand is coming through the knot facing and running in this direction. We're going to run it down and through the two pairs from the other knot that are on its side of the fid. I'm going to take our other tool, we're going to crack that open just a hair, just to make it easier. Just stretch it open, and we can just drop that little fella right through there. That way we don't even need to break up the paracord needles. Just drop it right through. We want to make sure it goes over its own part here, and then under the two opposing parts. Now that points us right toward the next rope, which is coming from the bottom knot, and so it goes over its own part and under the two opposing parts, heading upward. We'll just zip it right in there with the help of our other fid, nice and loose right now, so it doesn't take much effort. We've got this one on the top one, and it's going to come down in the same way, down through its two opposing parts after passing over its one part on its side. Oops, sorry, knocking the camera. Okay, and then the last one, we can see it's got already a nice tension provided by this piece not being tacked down when everything else is. And these two pieces, we know it's going to go under, so those are going to get pulled up. The other piece is going to come down. We can sort of feel that tension is going to be flattened out into the final shape of the knot, because this piece is going to bring everything to where sort of a flatter resting spot. And up it goes. Okay, now what we've done by threading all these pieces, there was also formed checkerboards, as we can see it tightening up. There's a 4-square pattern right there. I'll try to enhance. And one on the other side too, and those are all formed directly by those 4 pieces we pulled through. As we can see tightening, it's tightening one direction for both of those but not the other. Everything else forms a sort of interesting over 3 pattern on the outsides and comes through. We're going to want to remember to take care to dress those edges to match the diagonal of their 2 neighbors, so that when the finished knot is done, it looks and feels more like it's sort of a round edge laced coin. We're going to have that finished knot tightened up a little bit too. It's currently in a loose state. It's finished, but it's loose. You can see by just yanking on those ends, one dimension of the knot tightens up nicely, and we'll just ferrule out the ends so they're all on their right side. Take it right off the mandrel. We can tighten it a little bit more, and we're going to have to go through and do a lot more precise tightening in here to make sure the ends are good, but it's very systematic. It's an interesting shape of tightening. So we'll start with one end. If we have an end that we prefer stay the same length, we'll start with that, and we'll call it that side. This knot comes up from the right hand side, and it comes straight through that 4-square. You can tighten there to the desired tightness and follow it through. It comes up through and around. It dips back down around the whole knot as part of that top granny knot. So we'll tighten the top. We'll just follow it around, being careful not to over tighten on those over 3 steps. And you can just follow the same strand all the way through the knot, and we're just snugging it up. We don't want to put ultimate final tightness on it necessarily, just as much as necessary to ensure that the knot is symmetrical and of a good shape. So we're going to take our fit if we need to grab it and force it along a little bit. And once we're done, we'll see that now the white one is nice and snug. Now the green one looks sort of loose. So we're going to take it and follow it as well. I'm going to go right up and kind of have to eyeball it by tugging on the ropes and seeing what strands move on the other pieces, or you can pull on your guess and see if it moves along. But this is also a knot that's not that hard to figure out what shape it's supposed to be, so it's easy to see the loops and where they're supposed to go after a couple ties. It follows a nice pattern, just an unusual one compared to a lot of your Turk's head and globe shaped knots. So we're going to tighten it all the way around, and then again on the fairing of those edge pieces, it looks like the white one's probably a little off now, but we'll see. Again, on the fairing of those edge pieces, you just want to slip under the edge piece and use, this is a sharp fid, so I'm going to go grab a sort of a round-nosed fid for this paracord. Slip it in there and just tweak it around to make that center match the rope sort of vibe going on with the other pieces next to it. Same on the other side. Just grab it and twist, and then tighten the knot up accordingly to make sure you don't have any voids in it. And it might take a couple passes like with any knot. You're going to want to make sure you tighten your knot correctly. Otherwise it's not going to reach its optimum shape. Tightening usually takes 3 courses for a lot of Turk's heads, so I would say don't be shy on taking just a minute. It only takes a few minutes to tie the knot, but you're going to have it around, or someone's going to have it around for a long time. So it's worth tying the knot correctly, even if it takes a little extra time, and making sure that you're doing a thorough job at expressing the final shape of the knot correctly. Mistakes are not lethal or anything like that. It's certainly not bad to tie knots with flaws in them, but if possible, it's a good exercise to make sure you're doing what you can to tie the knot right. And a lot of that includes the fairing process at the end and during tying the knot. You want to sort of make sure you're keeping it in shape as you go, and also once you reach final tension, that last little bit of tension makes a big difference in the final shape of the knot, just like bike spokes when they're tensioned just right. It makes a big difference in the shape of the wheel. Okay, there's the finished knot. Lucky coin knot. The only possible way I've ever discovered or found or read about to manipulate granny knots successfully and well into a good finished product.